Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And this video is a discussion on Into the Spider-Verse with my mentor. And this will be like a cultural and animation discussion, and I'll have him introduce himself.
Hi guys, this is Karabo Legwaila. I am a professor of computer animation at Edinburgh University in Pennsylvania. And I've known Deborah a long time. We went to school together back in Rochester, New York, Rochester Institute of Technology. So it's nice to be able to do this with her because we are like animation people. So, you know, talk a little bit about the animation and stuff. All right.
Yes, Karabo was the TA in my first ever 3D class.
Long time ago.
Okay, so our first topic that we're going to start off with is story. So anything that we have to say about story, I'll start. I like that they had a lot of foreshadowing in the beginning. And so his dad's complaint about Spider-Man leads into why he doesn't feel like he can tell him later that he is Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And the teacher playing a clip of Olivia Octavius, Doc Ock, who he will meet later. So that was some foreshadowing. And then after getting assigned the Great Expectations essay, they play Biggie's Hypnotize. And that kind of alludes to the Doc Ock hypnotism thing. Right. And then the alchemic spider is for the place where Doc Ock works. So that's some initial story stuff. Do you have anything that you liked about the story?
You know, for me, the story was very well written, very well put together. Mm-hmm. Just the character of Miles being, you know, this kid. He's just a kid. He's going through a little stuff. He's struggling. He's in this school that he doesn't want to be in. He feels out of place. He's got a lot on his plate for someone so young.
Yeah.
And then to have this added on top of it, you know, he's having his issues with his father. He relates more to his uncle, who is sort of not on the good side of the law, if you will, compared to his father, who's a policeman. And then to find out that his uncle was working for Fisk. Just so much on this kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And watching him sort of deal with that through the movie to the point where he starts to be able to handle everything. It's just, the character arc was fantastic. I think they wrote him very well.
And through your talking, it kind of made me think of it can be comparable to like what kids, because I was thinking about how all this stuff is on him, and I'm sure that's like pretty typical of a kid from the inner city, and having to, if you're in a low poverty area and then having to take care of your like siblings or get home early, cook dinner. So all of this stuff on kids, this could be a comparable thing where maybe they could see themselves in the character where it's like, man, I'm just like 15 years old or something and I got to deal with all this. Like, why? Right. I'm a child.
Exactly. Right. It's a lot to put on somebody so young.
Yeah.
A lot of things that are supposed to be a good thing. He's in this school for like more sort of gifted students, but he feels out of place there because he's not around his own people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's and then he's got to live up to this father who is, this cop, this good guy. He's got to live up to that. He wants to do his spray painting, which is when your father's a cop, you're not gonna run around tagging stuff, or at least you shouldn't. But that's so it's just so much on the kid, and I just thought he was written brilliantly. So yeah.
So do you feel like you have any similar experiences with like coming from Botswana and then coming to America? I don't know, maybe not feeling like you belong, or just being a fish out of water, or just having to learn how to adapt?
For me, not necessarily, it's funny. America's always been comfortable to me, I should say. And it's weird because I've always lived in whiter parts of the country. I started out in Minnesota, northern Minnesota in the cold.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many black people out there. Then I ended up in New York, in the sort of whiter areas in New York, and I've sort of been. And now I'm in northwestern Pennsylvania. There's a lot of white areas. Funnily enough, though, I've never really felt too out of place.
Mm-hmm.
For me, growing up though, was just sort of living up to my father and you know his accomplishments. So my dad started out really really poor and
Mm-hmm.
managed to pull himself up, get to Harvard. He's a Harvard educated lawyer and all
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. And, just sort of living up to that image was
Right.
something kind of that was kind of tough. Um, but being in America, yeah, I mean, I see the problems in the country uh,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. But I've always been around a diverse group of people just my whole life. We had people from all over the world. In my country. And then when I went to high school, in Swaziland at a
Mm-hmm.
high school that was, they called the United World College. And
Okay.
I had people from all over the world, all races. So I've just always been surrounded by people of all races. Um, and there was no change because America is just full of that too. But even
Yeah.
though in the more white areas, I've been around enough white people in my life that I didn't really feel that out of place there.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
living up to your father's like kind of legacy is probably similar to Miles having a police officer as a
Right,
dad.
right, right,
Like,
right.
oh man, I got these high standards.
Yeah, because my dad was always about, you follow the rules. The rules are there for a reason. You follow the rules, no exceptions. So,
Yeah, like you said.
that's tough. That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And so some more about the story, some cultural references that I liked. Like the running game on a girl and or having game where he was trying to get the tips from his uncle and then he kind of sucked it trying to talk to
Yeah. Right.
Gwen. And then I mean just simply hopping fences, like I don't know, and the graffiti and the vernacular and tone that he switches at certain times throughout the movie, like it's just it just was a comfortable feeling of just little nuances that maybe other communities wouldn't notice, but it was cool.
Yeah. No, I certainly I did appreciate that. And I like that there was a little Spanish spoken there, because his mom is a Spanish speaker.
Right.
Um, that was nice as well. And he actually spoke some Spanish himself. Um, it's nice to see this, these characters that are typically played by, white characters.
Right.
To see that as even if even if it was like Asian or something, but something different was really nice. It's I'll have to admit I didn't really have that much experience with Miles Morales' character because
Right.
I don't really have much time nowadays to sort of sit down and read comics. But I have heard that some of the people that do read the comics always had this thing about Miles that he was too much like he was trying to live up to Peter Parker.
Okay.
And I've heard people say with this film that wasn't the case anymore, that he sort of had to find himself.
Yeah.
And be the person that he's supposed to be, which I thought was really nice. And those cultural aspects in it, the sort of the tagging, the spray painting, which, is sometimes used in a negative, the idea of young black kids running around spray painting things can be sometimes a negative image that, in this case, it didn't really feel too much that way.
Right.
It was him expressing his artistic side.
Looking at the beauty in.
Yeah. So, the very, again, this very deep character, very just beautifully written, deep character, flawed, as you'd expect, and just having to find himself in this craziness going on around him, I thought was just wonderful.
Yeah. So moving on to the character, because you mentioned the Spanish speaking. So in the opening sequence, like opening with listening to the song in his headphones and singing along, and then just like the imperfection that you mentioned of like him not knowing all the words, and it was just like that's me. That's
Right.
everybody.
Right.
Like we just be like,
I think for me that was one of the first, like right then I knew I already liked this character
Yeah.
because he was just sort of stumbling through the song, but it was more about the feeling, right? It's not about the
Right.
words. It's not about knowing the words. It's about the feeling of the song.
Right.
And that just struck me right there. Like, wow, this is going to be good. You know what I mean? So, uh, yeah, I love that. I love that. That was funny.
And then so he's bopping to the music on beat. So that's important in Black
Right, right.
and then trying to hit the high notes like trying to hit the high notes and thinking you're killing it when you're really not.
Right, right, right. I know I've done that myself.
Like I'll get that next time. And then the code switching of, okay, he starts off conversing with his mom in Spanish. He speaks to his Black friend, and then he speaks Spanish to his Hispanic/Latino friend, and then the intricate handshake with another friend. So it's just like all this like code switching depending on who the person is, and just the nuances of kind of being a person of color and having a diverse background, diverse friends, and all that type of stuff.
Mhm.
I like that aspect.
Yeah, no, and then sort of, once he gets to his school, the struggle that he has with the communicating with the people there, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting as well. That he was very liked when he started out on his way to school with all these people, and then as he sort of gets to school there, not so much.
Yeah.
It didn't help his dad embarrassed him right at the door, but which I thought was great. That was a nice piece of script writing right there.
Right.
Because we all remember back in the day being just our parents just embarrassing the hell out of us, and we just wishing we could just teleport out of there.
Like,
Wish you could turn on his invisibility right there.
right.
Which was great.
Oh, yeah, that would have been a nice asset to have at that point in the movie.
Right. Which could have been another foreshadowing thing, just because he eventually does get the ability to just disappear, and he actually does it later when he gets mad there in the basement there, when they realize he's not ready, and he's able to just disappear and go. So that might, for all I know, that was sort of foreshadowing of that as well there. So
and then the disappearing with his uncle when he went to go like kind of get comforted by him, and then the uncle comes through the window and he finds out that he's Prowler. So
yeah, because then now his world is really sort of crumbling around him.
Yeah.
And he's able to sort of disappear. But it's just awesome writing.
And then just to show off my research, the song playing while he was walking is Familia by Nicki Minaj and Annual AA, who's Puerto Rican, featuring Bantu. And so that gives you that reggaeton hip hop feel.
Right.
And so it's a continual mixture of who he is, which is half Black and half Puerto Rican. And then it also grabs the people of color in the audience to help see themselves in the movie immediately. So
right.
That was all in the opening sequence. I thought that was like really awesome to pull in people like, oh, this is gonna be about me.
Right. Yo, absolutely. And that's always a thing. People like to see themselves on screen, right? We even growing up in Africa, I mean, I was so familiar with American culture just from it's all over there just like it is here. And I just recently went back a couple months ago, and now there's more sort of local TV. There always was, but now there's a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's really intriguing, and you get caught up in it because you can relate to these people a little bit more than when it was mostly American entertainment. Even back in the 80s, man, it was just, I watched mostly American shows. There's a couple here and there that are local, but now there's a lot more. So it was nice. Yeah. It was nice to see that. Yeah.
Yes, it's nice to see foreign countries, particularly African countries, like whether it's getting them more technology or just feeling comfortable and not seeing America as the end all be all, and like, oh, we could produce our own things and it could be, we could have more of a connection to it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the movie was created in a way that it was for everyone, but they made sure to include something for people of color. And so he's wearing the Air Jordans in black urban areas, wearing the Jordans allowed you to connection to one of the greatest basketball players in history, and the shoes were a catalyst for the boom in sneaker culture. So those, man, like I've never owned a pair of Jordans, but I would get those.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I've had a few in my day. I never had those particular ones, but it was nice to see that. It was certainly nice to see that.
And let's see. Okay, so the rebelling because he cares more about his present than his future, like a typical kid. So not wanting to go to the private school, going to see his uncle Aaron when his dad didn't want him to. So that rebellious nature of like just being a kid. Like, I don't see what you see as far as like what the private school can benefit me. So I'm just like not gonna like it.
Right.
It's like what you appreciate later.
Right. And yeah, like you said, I mean, kids, man. you know, they say, there's all saying that youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
And that's a prime example right there, because he's got this opportunity. He's smart enough that he got into the school that is a jump off point for like an amazing life if he would just recognize. And I'm sure I went through that in my day, thinking, why do I have to do this stuff? But you sort of have to grow up, buckle down, and deal with it. So yeah, there's always that aspect when you're young.
And that could be another foreshadowing moment, because you said jumping off point, and I thought about him jumping off the building. And so just being put in uncomfortable situations, like, okay, you're tied up with this webbing all over your body and over your mouth, and they're like, peace, you're not ready. And he's like, like Goku or something.
Yeah.
And then gets all the spider webs off of him, and then that's his start of his journey to becoming Spider-Man.
Yep. That was good. He sort of had to work it out in his mind. He had to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good way for him to do that. And, part of me wonders if that's what Peter was hoping for.
It had to be a setup, at least from Peter. At the very least, from Peter. I don't know about the other Spider-Mans, but Peter was like, "Yeah, this is gonna get him."
Right. So, that was really nice. Sometimes you gotta just take the time to figure it out, and then once you do, you go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, and he goes to the lair or whatever, and Aunt May is like, "It's about time." So that has to be on purpose.
Yeah, and I love that May in this, because she was badass. You know what I mean? She was just sitting there like, dude, what took you so long? You know what I mean? that was brilliant. She wasn't just this old lady. There was substance to her. There was this sort of, they fleshed her out very well. So I love that. And she made him the web shooters. Little things like that, I think, added to the story. Just give Aunt May something more to do than just be the aunt whose husband died. She was a much more interesting character, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. So before we get into the character design, do you have anything else that you think about just the character writing of Miles Morales that you liked?
Well, yeah, just like I say, he's just very, very deeply, very well written. I suspect that it took him a long time to get all the stuff into that character that they wanted, because he was very well acted too. Shameik Moore did a fan, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't familiar with Shameik Moore before this, but I thought he just played him perfectly. Just the way his voice is. And the way the sort of dialogue was written felt very real, very real to me, and played brilliantly by Shameik Moore. And so and like I said, from just from him singing at the beginning, in that voice, it was just played so well. So yeah, definitely liked the character. Yeah.
Yeah, even with like all the stuff we're going to get into later with the animation and just all the innovation that they did. For me, with you, the number one way, the reason I thought it was like an awesome movie is because of the story and the writing. It's just like y'all took so much care with this character, with this story, and you could tell like they were like, yeah, this is important. We're gonna do this right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. So for the character design, we got the broad nose, got the afro hair,
Yeah.
full lips,
Yeah.
full lips. So and then to kind of go off on the full lips. So something that I noticed as I'm trying to learn more. I mean, because I essentially know character modeling, but I just haven't practiced a lot. And then trying to learn more sculpting. I watch all these YouTube videos, and as you know, there's like a lot of white animators or modelers that kind of produce these videos. And when they're going over the structure of creating lips, they're always like, oh yeah, the upper lip hangs over the bottom lip a little bit. I'm like, that's for white people. Y'all are never telling like the perspective from a black character, because our lips don't do that.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
there's a YouTuber called Jan Sculpts, and he like sculpted a black woman, like a speed sculpt. And I like had to leave a comment like, wow, this is like the first black person I've seen. I've like watched hundreds of videos, and this is like the first black person I've seen done by like a white person. I'm just like, y'all just don't be modeling black people.
Yeah. It's true. And, you know, on one hand, it's kind of to be expected, right? Most people, when they want to make characters, they tend to make characters that look like them.
Yeah.
And they probably have more, you know, being white, they grew up around white people, so they notice the features better than trying to reproduce a black person. So you can kind of understand that, but at the same time, you kind of as a designer, you want to be able to, you know, make multiple types of ethnicities and what have you to sort of broaden your range as an artist. And there are obviously differences, and not just the major differences like the broader noses and whatever, but there's you know, there's a lot of differences in our facial structures and all the just body types as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of differences there. So, you know, as an artist, you want to be well rounded. It would serve you well to sort of do everybody. You know, do Asians, do Native Americans, do whatever it is. Just to get the skill to, you start to recognize the nuance between the different races, beyond just the obvious Asian people have the eyes and whatnot, but there's probably other little things in there as well that are not so obvious that you start to see. So to see a character like Miles done, you know, the hair, the nose, like you said, yeah, it's very nice to be able to see that as a black person in this day and age. To be able to see that is really nice.
Yeah, and like you know, you were saying the body structure. Something I learned recently is even with the BMI that they tell us at the doctor, like it's not applicable to black people. So our body structure is so different than when they say, "Oh, this is your ideal weight." Like that's not really we shouldn't listen.
Right.
That's not ideal weight for a black person, because we're just shaped differently. So it's just like people don't even really think about that. Where like I remember seeing another video where this guy was testifying. I think he was a doctor, and he was testifying at some type of forum, and he was saying how the you know, the little diet, it used to be a pyramid, but now it's something else, which I don't know because I'm not in school. But he was saying that you keep telling people to drink milk every day, but most black people are lactose intolerant, so you're like killing us. And so it's just like the nuances of how research is done. Like people always look from that like European lens, and even with like you know, the hand washing where it starts automatically. Sometimes that doesn't work depending on your skin color, and the AI that they're doing now, and they're not like testing it on black people. So like at the global entry at the airport, sometimes it doesn't work for black people.
Wow. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Our skin absorbs light, and white people's skin like reflects it.
Right.
So that's the problem.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in, where you know, like for example, in fashion, they call things nude, and what color is nude, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, really. Um, but and what's funny is that even amongst white people, there's a good range of skin tones there,
Yeah.
and that nude, it sort of applies to a very light sort of lighter end of that spectrum.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, a lot of times these things are made where people. The thing is, people think that the main difference between us is that we have very slight physical things here, and then the
Yeah.
skin tone, and that's where it ends. It really it goes a lot. There's like genetic difference. There's a lot of differences between us in how we're sort of built and what have you. Um,
Even when you think of the slim fit trend, like black men have thighs.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, that's always funny. This skinny jeans and whatnot. I'm like, I'm not wearing that, man. I'm not. I couldn't fit in there if I wanted to. I couldn't fit in those
Right.
jeans. You
Like,
know what I'm
it just stays in the dressing room. You don't even come
right.
out.
It's not just the black women with the booties. We got some booties too, the dudes. You know what I mean? So, it's just yeah. Some of these fashion trends we can't go on that ride. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The buck stops here. So to go into more character design, so the Spider-Man costume, we go from the makeshift costume where he bought it from Stan Lee, the Halloween costume, and then when he becomes a real Spider-Man, you go to the costume that he spray painted, which
Right.
is still bringing in his culture, and then the graffiti spider. So it kind of combines his old self and his new self with the Spider-Man costume and then the graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
So like a nice, and then something that stayed consistent. Because I guess it's winter. He still, whether he has the old costume or the new costume, he has the Jordans, the hoodie, the jacket, and what else? The shorts.
Yeah, yeah,
So
the shorts on. Yep, yep. Yeah, no, that was I really did like the design of that costume. I thought what they did with it. Only thing that sort of maybe gave me a little pause there was that he never got to sort of build his own suit. He took Peter's suit and then adjusted that. And then also just given how much smaller he is than Peter,
right.
it's one of those things we got to just sort of push that to the side. Right.
Like retrofitted or Black Panther, how it just
it just shrinks down, right? So you sort of overlook that. I definitely like that black suit. I mean, it was nice. The black with the red highlights was really nice. And speaking of Miles' size, it was always funny to me that he's that small. You know what I mean? He's how is he, 15, 16, somewhere around there? 15, 16, you're generally about almost as tall as you're going to be, you know.
Right.
And he's a lot shorter than his father. And it always bugged me, like, why is he so small? and maybe it was sort of a writing thing to where he's a minority. So he's a small guy.
Right.
And that, when he comes up in the end and does big things, it sort of adds to that. So maybe there's that aspect to it, which I think is a nice little thing. But he always struck me as like, why is this kid so small? Because even his mama's taller than he is. So yeah.
It's still possible. So yeah, anything we're gonna move on to animation next, but anything with any of like the character design, I am gonna go into the style of the multiple Spider-Mans, but anything else with like the character design of Miles or any of the other not the Spider-Mans but the other characters.
Yeah, I mean, Green Goblin to me, that was weird, to be honest with you. Him being an actual beast that with wings and I thought that was a little weird. Kingpin was interesting. That bulk of, of him. And again, I wish I knew more about the character and why he's so strong, the way he's as strong as he is.
Yeah.
because he's basically because Spider-Man has superhuman strength, and this guy can hold off Spider-Man. And I don't, I don't, like I said, I don't remember I don't know the character too well. I don't know if he got superpowers somewhere or he's just that strong somehow. I don't know, but the way they had him, where he was that big, I know the first time I saw the movie, it was a little sort of jarring, like, wow. I mean, yeah, we get that he's a big guy, but that was like huge. But it sort of grew on me over time.
Yeah.
Spider Noir, fantastic. The whole black and white, wearing the trench coat and the hat was great.
Yeah, we're gonna get to Spider-Man's later.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So.
Just to go back to the Green Goblin, I want to kind of tell the viewers, like, in animation, as you know, it allows you to have imagination, but it's still based in reality. So it's just like you can only do so much. You can play with the physics, but in order for audiences to like it, you still want to kind of base it in reality. And so I remember when I took my gesture drawing class and we had to combine like 2 or 3 animals, like we had to do a skeleton and combine 2 or 3 animals. It still had to look realistic. Like you had to take time and put care into it. Like if you put a bird and an alligator or something together, it still had to look like it was a real animal. So you can't, even though it's animation, you can't just throw it together and be like, oh, people will like that. Like, no, we still need some type of reality. Even if you're flying, it still needs to be some type of physics to it and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I would agree with that 100%. You can't go too far with it. Well, what I tell my students is you push it, and when it goes too far, you can dial it back. You push it as far as you can, but when it starts to fall apart there, you can always dial it back a little bit. And that's probably the sweet spot right there. The Green Goblin, I didn't really like that camera too much. He wasn't there very long, so I didn't dwell on that. The Scorpion, another one, was, I wasn't in love with that character either. But other than that, everything else, I did like the Prowler. I love the music that came with him whenever he was around. It was like, I just watched it with my daughter, and every time the music came on, I could feel her tense up, which was it was very, very, very interesting. Combining the design with the music was really good on that character.
Yeah, something that I've been learning as I do more character modeling and watch more videos is even when you do cartoony 3D models, they still have to have anatomy, like the correct anatomy. So that's even as somebody who kind of learned in school, it was a new thing where I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of does make sense, where you can't just get crazy with the anatomy of a cartoon. It's still, even if it's not a realistic human, you still have to keep the kind of proportions, or you have to just be realistic with anatomy.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is one of the things that I sort of get on my students about is you got to know anatomy, right? You can't just, if you're going to have a humanoid character, you can't just do whatever, because people are going to call that out. It's gonna not sit right. And even if somebody can't articulate what's wrong with it, something's just not going to sit right with them. Like, well, what something's wrong with this character. So
it's every day, so we know innately.
Right. Exactly. So you gotta understand how the human body works, because a lot of students, students they can be lazy sometimes. They think they can just sit there and pull out a character in no time at all. And it's like, nah, you kind of have to do some pre-work before you start designing the character. You got to understand anatomy. I teach a modeling class, and we model the head of a character, and before we even get there, I start talking about anatomy. I start talking about the facial muscles, the fat layers, the bone layers. You got to know all this stuff, otherwise you're not gonna be able to do it right. And they don't listen. The first time around, they don't listen, right?
Learn this way.
And then they hand me something, and I critique it, and I basically rip it apart, and I tell them why, and I say, look, I told you guys this at the beginning. If you're gonna reproduce something, you gotta study it. First, But by the end of the class, they sort of understand that. So humans, we tend to base things in our own reality. It's very hard for humans to think outside of that. So when you're designing characters, you kind of have to remember that and push it as far as you can. But you got to remember the sort of foundation is real human anatomy.
Cool. So next we're gonna move on to the animation. And so something just to give like some kind of information to viewers, something that one of my professors taught me when I took script writing for animation is that when you use animation as a medium, you're kind of using it for a purpose. And this is kind of something I said in my Lion King review video, where there's literally no point in using animation if you're going to try to make it realistic. Like, what's the point of lion? And so that's something he taught us, where like use the medium for what it's used for. Like have somebody flying, have somebody doing Stretch Armstrong. Like if you're going to use 2D or 3D as a medium, if you're not going to use live action, what is the reason you're using it, and then use that. So animation is a medium where possibilities are endless. So actually use it to your advantage and have components that are unique to the medium. So where a lot of animated movies fail these days is that they're trying so hard to be realistic, but that's what live action is for. So like Into the Spider-Verse just took that to the totally different direction. Like we gonna animate this in multiple ways.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. The Spider-Verse was, generally I don't like toon shading. For the reason that, trying to make 3D look like 2D sometimes looks real goofy. 2D is imperfect, and that for me that's the thing I love about it. So when a character does a turn in 3D space, quote unquote 3D space, when you're talking about 2D animation, it's off a little bit because it's hard to draw that frame by frame. And anytime someone does 3D animation and toon shades it, and a character's moving around in 3D space, it's too perfect and it just doesn't look right to me.
Yeah.
But with this film, I think they did it in a way that it worked very well.
Yeah.
Just the look of it. I mean, if you sort of pause it and look at a frame and how they set it up, there's like multiple layers going on there. There's the outlines of the characters are there, but they're not too bold and too out there. There's like dot sort of hatching with dots kind of a thing going on in the shadow areas. And even when they did like a depth of field blur, sort of rack focus, the way that they do it, they sort of split the layers. It's really very technically well done, but still being very artistic in how they did it. So this film was very, I think for me, probably the best use of sort of quote unquote toon shading on 3D animation I've seen.
Yeah, so when you're talking about the 2D animation, so I'm doing research for another video, or maybe multiple videos, where kind of talking about different famous animators. And so I recently came across a post, what is his name? Is it Milk Call? And he did, Tigger and a lot of the characters in Jungle Book and stuff like that. And so they say, every animator has their style. And so his calling card is called like the wiggle. And so he would do that a lot because of how hard it was. So if you think of Snake, and then some of the other characters in Jungle Book where they go like and or Tigger, and he's like and then in like what is it? Is it Robin Hood, where he'll have the cat character? Is it a lion or? And he would do the wiggle while turning, and just to keep the perspective of that in 2D, that's why he would do it, because he'd be like, none of y'all can do this, so I'm gonna do it like every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That kind of goes to your point of how 2D is imperfect, but then because that was his calling card, because he could do it better than anybody else.
Yeah. That's it is hard to do because we have a traditional animation department, and actually, I don't know if you remember Jeremy from RIT. He's a professor in there. And just watching some of the things that they do. 2D is hard. I 2D is just not my thing. I don't have the patience to sit there and draw a million things.
Me
Uh,
neither. Not my ministry. That's another video I want to do. Like, all animation is tedious. It just depends on what tediousness you want to deal with. Because 3D is tedious, but I can deal with pushing and pulling points or edges or faces. But like, I feel like with 2D, it's like drawing the same picture over and over again.
yeah. So that's definitely not for me. I mean, generally, I don't like to do actual animation myself. I'm more sort of modeler. I do fluid dynamics and stuff because animation is very, very tedious. To get it looking good, you really got to put in that time to get it right. And it's difficult. It's not easy. But definitely 2D is like, man, you're gonna sit there and draw over and over. At 24 frames a second, if you're doing it on twos instead of ones, you still got to do 12 drawings to get 1 second of animation, which is just insane to me. But you got, if you love to draw, then you do that. But yeah, you got to find what you love.
Yeah, and like as I've told people before, like I call myself BlkWmnAnimator, but I'm actually BlkWmnModeler.
Yeah.
It's just like the animator part is for the masses because y'all don't know what. Because if I call myself BlkWmnModeler, like, oh, you model, like, oh, I just would y'all just piss me off. I'll just be like, nah, I'm BlkWmnAnimator. Y'all know what the animator is.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing because the whole field is called computer animation, and then people look at me like, oh, so you animate? I'm like, no, not really. I model stuff and I do fluid simulations and whatnot, but no, animation, no, not really. But yeah, it's for a certain type of person. I'm not that dude.
Man, I like when I would take 3D animation classes, it was just like I thought I was pushing myself, and then it's just like, nah. That's why animation not my thing, because I'm like, it could be better, and I don't never get to the better part. Like, it's just like always flat.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand animation. I understand how it works. It's just I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I get it and I can teach it. I just don't like to do it myself. And that's okay. That's the nice thing about this field is that you don't have to do everything. You can specialize in whatever you like and just do that. That's always a nice thing. In 2D, you kind of have to be able to animate. It's just what it is. Unless you're, one of the background artists, or if you're, one of the guys that do the coloring, the filling, that type of stuff. But generally, you have to be able to animate. Yeah.
Check out my jobs in animation series. I'm still going to be producing more videos, but I got some of them. So you like to draw? That's one of them. That's the first. Well, that's the second one I made.